since the 23rd of September, 2017. Go jump ahead.
I'm trying.
Yeah, for a long time there, a lot of years there, I was teaching groups about this size all the time, constantly, and maybe one a month. That's all I could get, people to listen. It just went on like that for a long, long time, 10, 15 years. And then all of a sudden, it just started going through the roof. And that's about when it started. And this is Revelations chapter 12. So the event that starts Revelations chapter 12 was actually recorded by NASA. And it was a recorded event. And that event starts a 2,000-day period of awakening. What happens at the end of the 2,000 days? Anybody know? No. The people rise up and they tell the governments of the world, you guys have been corrupt for far too long, we're not putting up with it anymore. And that's it. We come out of Babylon at the end of the 2,000 days. Guess what in 4 days happens? We're 4 days from now, we're 730 days into it.
I have one.
That means we got 1,270 days left. By the end of it, by Monday. That's it. It's all the time left we've got to wake everybody else up. Now, not everybody has to wake up. Most of them are going to ignore it. They're not going to wake up. It only takes a small percentage, about 10% of the population. 7 to 10% of the population wakes up, and governments will fall. They'll fail. No, in fact, almost every war we've ever had, there was 3 to 7% participation. 3 to 7. This is supposed to be 10%. What's that? Read the Bible. I mean,
That's what I thought.
historians have proved that everything up to this date has come true already. All those things predicted in the Bible, every one of them, they've recorded, it's proven, it's come true. So how do you argue with that? It's 2,500-year-old prophecy. One of the things that kind of freaked me out in learning what we're learning is you get a Bible on a search engine and you type in the word man and person. And 2,500 years ago, 5 authors of books in the Bible distinguished clearly between what it means to be a man and a person. It says, do not put flattering titles upon the man. Be the man and not the person. They knew what was going to happen, and it's been happening in various countries in the world since 1666. Okay. 1666, they burnt the city of London down. Why did they burn London down in 1666? To kill the bubonic plague, to kill all the rats. They knew they could rebuild it, but London burned. And the reason they went ahead and burned it is because they figured out a way to make money off we the people to pay for the rebuilding. And it was called the Cestic QB Trust Act, the very first one. Other companies adopted it in 1707. The United States adopted it, but they had to put various acts of Congress into place over a period of time of between 1908 and 1935, and they adopted it in 1935. So everything that happens in England eventually happens in America. You can take English law and American laws, Canada's laws, Australian laws, New Zealand's laws, and Italy's laws, Scotland's laws, and they all are pretty much the same. I help get kids back in all those countries because the laws are virtually the same. You just got to figure out where it is and when it happened. That's it. So during this period of time, bankers started this whole ball of wax, and they put various acts into place to make this world's largest Ponzi scheme, this system of fraud. So what I normally start out with is, how does power work in the world? Where does power come from? Well, if you remember Bill Clinton's trials, I tell everybody this. Bill Clinton in front of Congress, 1999.
I've looked that up online trying to find that. I can't find it. So I've been waiting for you to pull it.
Well, there's a reason you can't find it. Because they removed the final days of hearings off the map. It used to be an easy video to pull up. Final days of hearing. The minute people are out there talking about it, they start bringing it up, they do everything they can to hide it. Just makes me madder than heck. But he just pulled a dollar bill out and he was playing with it for hours and hours and hours. And then he had enough and he held it up like that, and you can see head bob in the room. They dismissed the hearings and he served out in the last 2 years of his presidency. What he was telling them with that. Yeah. What he was telling them.
I thought he actually folded it into a pyramid.
No, he didn't have to. It's printed right on it.
The pyramid's right there. Yeah.
So what he did is told them, hey guys, see this all seeing eye? This is the pin guard. The top part of the pyramid, there's 13 blocks. The bottom part of that pyramid, there's 300 blocks. This is a council of 13, this is a council of 300. Council of 300 is known as the Bilderberg Group.
What is it? The builder?
Bilderberg.
Bilderberg.
Group.
It happens every year. It's intense. It's where everything basically all come
Bohemia, they
together.
meet at Bohemia Grove. They do all kinds of things at Bohemia Grove. You can take every single organization on earth and you draw a line down where it goes up into that pyramid, and you could write the name of every organization on earth. Doesn't matter. It could be the Catholic Church, it could be the Mormon Church, it could be the Pentecostal Church, it could be the United States government, the city of, the county of, a police department. It doesn't matter. It could be any business or corporation. So I'm going to stop and tell a little story. There's this kid I met, and he went to law school, and he became an attorney, and he passed the bar, and he got recruited to a big law firm in Seattle. And they celebrated, the whole law firm celebrated, and everybody met at the restaurant on top of the Space Needle. And after they got done eating, I don't know if you know this, but the restaurant spins, and in 1 hour's time, it goes all the way around. And so you can see the whole city. And at the end of the meal, the kid's standing there and he's just looking out the window out at the city. And the guy that's the president of the law firm comes up and he puts his arm around him and he says, "You see all that out there? You see all those corporations, all those big corporations? There's Boeing and Amazon and Microsoft, 3 of the largest corporations in the world. And all these smaller corporations, you see them all, right down to the little bittiest one. And the kid says, yeah. He says, who do you think runs those? And the kid says, well, the CEOs of the corporations. And he says, the CEO does absolutely nothing until he runs it by an attorney. We run it. The Bar Association runs it. They run every corporation in the world. And he's right. Those CEOs do nothing until they run it by their legal department. Yeah. So the Bar Association controls everything. They control the banks, the pharmaceutical companies. Now, the bankers write the checks. They own it all.
Well, can I say, I interrupt, our problem with our healthcare? Attorneys. That's the problem. Get rid of the attorneys and our healthcare would go back to reasonable costs.
Same way with our government. You get rid of the
Right,
attorneys
exactly.
in government, our government will go back to a decent government.
Sorry.
But that is the biggest issue. All these people down here, that's you and me and our neighbors. It's all of us. We're all in some group, some church, some organization, some company, doesn't matter. Somewhere we're in there. But what happens when people rise to the top? Greed, lust, envy, right? Power. The 7 deadly sins take effect. When they do that, they enter here. And then they get controlled by those sins, by these people. These guys up here are the bankers of the world. These people are the Bar Association. When I go out on these presidential task forces and we gather evidence and we collect evidence all over the country, and we run into literally satanic stuff. I mean, really satanic stuff. Last Wednesday, I spent almost all day on the telephone coordinating the efforts in 3 states affecting the arrest of 19 people last Wednesday. And you know, there was a judge in the group, there were prosecutors in the group, there was bankers in the group, there were county commissioners in the group. These are your most powerful people in your communities. There was 1 police officer out of 19. These are satanic people doing bad things to our children.
Yes, we want the money out.
That's right. Did you see a thing on the newspaper where there were 2,000 aborted babies in one house
Yeah,
found
we just saw that in Illinois.
right here in Illinois? It was an adrenochrome factory. You know what adrenochrome is? When a baby gets aborted or a child gets killed, they're in fear. When they're in fear, their adrenaline goes up. The adrenaline goes to their brain. They pull the fluids out of the brain, and that's adrenochrome. And these satanic people ingest that. It's 7 times more powerful than cocaine or heroin. That's why they sacrifice children and drink their blood after they scare the heck out of them.
I didn't know. Oh my gosh, so what do they do with all these abortion clinics? Are they selling off those
Yes.
babies to these people?
Yes.
Oh.
So let me tell you something. Who are the Pindar? The Pindar was Queen of England, Queen of Holland, and it used to be Vatican,
Why is it not Vatican?
because we had a good pope. And you were a pope before. Oh, Benedict signed us off. Signed out of it completely. What's that? He's pre-state 10. So,
They're coming back because of that?
so anyway, somebody had to take that place. The PINDAR requires 3. Okay. Now, there's kind of a guy who thinks he deserves it, and he convinced a lot of people that he did. I mean, he's in the PINDAR, and that's his initials. However, truth always comes out. Truth survives. Now, it's not that he was wrong. He believed he was right. But if you study the history and you go back a few generations in his family, something happened.
Maybe it was just window shop.
This man really is supposed to be in the pit instead of him. But they're related. This man here, pretty much all the wealth in the world is his. He inherited it. And his whole life, he's in his 50s, his whole life he's been living in a shanty town.
Oh yeah, the rest of the season.
A little shanty town. He's never had any real money. In fact, I think the most he's ever been able to save in his entire life is probably about $20,000. Yet he's the heir of the world's largest fortune. But this guy thinks he is, because he went back a few generations and his grandfathers took over his grandfather's accounts and managed them, just to manage them. And then they kind of ended up controlling. Okay. And then they landed back to the world banks. They lent the fortune to the world banks. Now it's all tied up in the world banks. This guy's a pauper, yet he's a king. But we just proved it's all his. We're trying to get it back.
Get it back. You can rehearse
A
it.
couple of weeks ago, we did one of the world's largest IP-to-IP transfers this world's ever seen.
Wait, IP,
IP-to-IP. Created cash from solid metal. In other words, we created a currency that was backed by the gold that's his, that's stored. Created the sovereign cash.
Isn't that the gold that's massive now?
A $1 trillion IP-to-IP. But guess what? The Vatican took their commission up front of $20 billion. We had to pay them $20 billion up front to get the deal to go through.
wait, how is he related to the Vatican? I thought the Vatican, he is a part of the Vatican.
The Vatican used to be up here
Right, they
and
opted out.
controlled,
Oh, so
for many
they,
years, controlled that group.
so because they opted out, they still want that money.
They had a legal, not necessarily lawful, but they had a legal right to some of this. They had to sign off. And that was their payment for signing off.
That's actually documented.
Hmm?
That's actually documented.
Yeah,
How much did they get? 20 billion?
20 billion.
Which is funny to us, that sounds like so much money, but when you're talking in order
It
to
really,
trillions, it's not that much. It's
you're
what?
right.
It's
In the
a
scheme of
percentage or
things, it
whatever.
wasn't that much.
Yeah,
It was a lot for the people that put the transaction together to come up with. Took a year to come up with that, but it just went through. One thing that has been kind of a driving force in getting all this figured out was learning hierarchy of money. where did money come from in the world? Let's go back to Adam and Eve. Where did money first come into play? Yes, it was silver and gold.
Or like vegetables? Or Adam and Eve?
Okay, in the early times, there wasn't enough people on Earth, so we all bartered.
Yeah.
If I hunted and you fished, I gave you fur, hide for fish, or something like that, or red meat for fish, whatever. We all traded things, we all bartered for whatever it is we needed. But even God knew that at some point in time, the population was going to reach a certain point where some kind of an interim trade item would be needed. Because if I hunted and you fished, and you didn't need any red meat, you didn't need any hides, but I wanted the fish, you had no reason to trade with me. Okay? So they knew that at some point in time there was going to be so many people that we'd need it. So what did he do? He went to the most beloved person alive in the world at that time. His name was King Solomon, son of David. And he blessed King Solomon because his people loved him. His people were all over the world. Most people don't know this. But he blessed King Solomon with the ability to literally walk the earth, and through the bottom soles of his feet, he could say, dig here, there's gold. Dig here, there's silver. And during the 900 years almost of King Solomon's life, they removed about 1/3 of the world's treasure. Why is that? How could they do that without caterpillars and dump trucks and moving millions of tons of dirt like you see on Gold Rush on TV? Because, no, numbers of people helped, numbers of laborers who followed King Solomon and loved it. But minerals used to be big, and they removed the big ones, and then I was left with smaller ones, and then they removed those, and then they removed those, and then they removed those, and now they got to remove millions and millions and millions of tons of earth to find a few ounces of gold flake that size, right? So that's the way it worked. Since King Solomon, we've only removed about 1/3 of the wealth. There's still 1/3 of the wealth hidden out there, buried. Okay? But that's how mining works. And we're down in here now. In fact, now they're using chemical processes to take a speck 100,000th of that size and get it out of a rock. So it's just getting harder and harder and more expensive and more equipment and everything else just to keep removing minerals. Big minerals today is like lithium. There's not a battery on Earth that doesn't have lithium. Lithium is found in just a few places in the world. Yeah, a little bit. Same. So, from King Solomon, I'm going to skip a whole bunch of generations of people, but eventually the fortune ended up in Caesar, Julius Caesar. Okay. Historians will tell you during Caesar's day he never had to count his money, that it was measured in millions of metric tons. Millions of metric tons. Rome flourished prior to Caesar. Everybody was happy. It was kind of a euphoria of sorts. Everybody had tons of money. Why? Because there was so much of it. They just all shared. No, it was one of the biggest socialist societies on earth because you had the leader who was generous. When the leader stopped being generous, socialism stops working because they're not sharing it. Okay? And that's the problem with socialism. But when you have a generous leader, he shares with everybody, he makes sure that everybody's wealthy, everybody has everything they need, all things are provided for you. And Rome flourished for centuries, hundreds of years it flourished. And then some things started to take place. Greed started setting in. And we all know Christ had to die for our sins. And something happened after Caesar, go down a few generations. And you got Tiberius, and he was getting kind of old. And his son, he was grooming him to be king, and his son was pretty righteous. Their family was fairly righteous. And his son got killed in battle. But not until he had a grandson. So then Tiberius is getting older and older, and he was grooming his grandson. A few months before his 21st birthday, when he was going to inherit all of this, inherit the kingdom, he fell off a horse, hit his head on a rock, and was killed. The leader of Rome was so distraught that he turned over Rome to his senators to run. And he left and he went to live with family in France. The senators were on his mind, those that crucified Christ. So had his family took over, Christ may never have been crucified. So there was a reason those two boys were killed, and the Senate took over. Otherwise, it couldn't follow God's plan. So, skip a bunch more generations. It actually got inherited to a daughter, which was unheard of back then, and then went to her son. But eventually it came down to two people, King John, King Ferdinand of Spain, two cousins. The family fortune was split for the first time in history. Before that, they kept all the gold and all the silver together under basically one family. Had it all in common. And they made coinage. People had coins. Those people had 20 bucks, let's just say 20 bucks in their pocket, right? The majority, the billions of metric tons, was just passed down generation to generation. So King John had a little bit of a problem. England was being attacked from all sides by the Scottish nomad tribes, by the Russian tribes, by the Norwegian tribes, the Vikings, by Germany. England was just being attacked. How's King John, who lived down at the southern end of the island, London, how did he, it took a long time to ride a horse from here to here to go defend an invading army coming in from the north. So what did he do? He took England and he divided it all up into counties. Counties. And they built a lavish castle in each county and installed a lord. And he had big armies. They bought the best horses. All this came out of King John's fortune. See, a lot of people think that these guys collected tax from the poor, collected it and gave it to King John. No, that was just his interest. He had to put the money up first. None of them had any money except King John. So King John set up all the counties, set up lords in each county, furnished their armies, best horses, best meals, kept the lords happy, gave the lords vast acreages of land to run and to operate, and then the peasants worked for it. They collected taxes from the peasants and they gave back to King John. And the king is interest. That's how governments got set up, right? What's that? Yeah, collected taxes. So that's how governments got set up. And it started in England, and it just spread throughout the world.
Yeah, what years are we talking?
Prior to 1215. In 1215 was the Magna Carta, and the lords signed on, and the king gave power back to the people of the Magna Carta. This much. But they gave some back. So, we're talking prior to 1200. Okay. King Ferdinand of Spain, what did he do? See, King John got all the cash that Rome had, but they had a lot more gold. King Solomon's mines were all over the world. So in order for King Ferdinand to get his portion, what did he do? He got a little bit of the money, and then he built ships. Now, see, Spain was more righteous than England at the time. But he built ships. Why did he build ships? Because he inherited the world. He inherited the gold all over the world. There was gold. 17 caves in the Philippines were full of gold. King Solomon's mines gold. One of the largest storages of the gold was in New Zealand, Easter Island, the Cook Islands, Hawaii had a big storage. Okay, huge storages of gold. Gold stored in Africa. King Solomon's mines were on every continent, and the King of Spain went to get it. All these Spanish galleons with gold taken from the Incas and the Mayans. Who were the Incas and the Mayans? They were King Solomon's people. What does the word Filipino mean? First people. Through the Maharakan tribe, they can trace their ancestry right back to Adam through Seth. They kept a record of it. They were the ultimate genealogists. They knew their whole family history. In fact, the Maori, the king of the Maori, had 12 sons. This was back early 1700s. He had 12 sons, and he gave one son Hawaii, one son Polynesian Islands, one son the Easter Islands. Easter Islands are just a VR island. The Cook Islands, the Philippines. A Maharakan was a son of a Maori. This man right here is the king of the Maori. He's the heir to the fortune. Oh, he knows it. He knows it. And just recently was able to prove it to the World Bank today.
Has he always known it?
He's known it for generations, but he was never able to prove it. Now he has. He spent his whole life researching and gathering evidence to prove the fact that he was the eldest son of an eldest son of an eldest son of an eldest son, going all the way back. So he proved it. We're working right now to get him this one out because he wants to eliminate poverty in the world. So does this man. This man wants to eliminate poverty. The problem is, this man thinks he owns it. This man truly does. We've proven it. Okay. This man still thinks he does. You want to have fun? Go to YouTube. 3-hour video. Letter to Queen Elizabeth II from TVM. He shows all the deposit slips. Fathers and grandfathers back 5 generations setting up the Bank of China, the world banks. There's a good man in this world called the old man. That's all he's called. He's Chinese. He owns 20+% of the World Bank, the controlling interest in the World Bank, the entire International Monetary Fund. He's called the old man. The old man now knows, as of the day before yesterday, that this man is the true heir. He found out the day before yesterday. And he found out from a sweet little princess, got to tell him, who's his niece. And she was able to prove it all to him. So, power and money. This is how we arrive at power and money. Power and money controls the world through the bankers. These guys, are the army of the bankers. That's who the Bar Association is. The very first corporation on earth was the Crown. Crown Inc. It was owned by the Queen of England, the Queen of Holland, and the Vatican. You can trace every corporation back to that. Crown Inc.
Are those tools bars for
British Accreditation Register.
Register.
Yes. They are the army for the crown. They are the army for the bankers. The United States signed a treaty with the bar in 1947 so they could operate on these shores. It wasn't the first treaty with the bar. They just renewed the treaty. The bar's been around long before 47. But what does that mean? What is the legal definition of the word treaty?
Wouldn't that be like an agreement between one person and another?
And it's an agreement between two foreign nations and or entities. So they're foreign to each other. So that's a real easy way, just the fact that we have a treaty with them, that's a real easy way to know that they're foreigners. Every bar member in the country has sworn an oath to a foreign nation. The state of Illinois, since we're here, if you go to the state of Illinois' website under the Office of Attorney General, and you click on the History tab and you read it, it will say in there that the Office of the Attorney General of the state of Illinois was put into place to protect and uphold the interests of the crown. It says it right on their website. How do you feel about that?
It's our state constitution, quite a bit. I haven't counted the amount of times. it's
See,
in
that's
there.
what I'm trying to tell you. All this stuff, this isn't a secret. Nobody made this up. It's all hidden in plain sight. It's in. They take something. The government publishes everything, but they'll publish a little bit over here, and a little bit over here, and a little bit here, and here, and here, and here, and here. And it takes an idiot like me who studies 4 to 5 hours a day and reads 1,400 words a minute for 30 years to be able to pull those little pieces of the puzzle together and put them together in a puzzle and say, holy crap, now I know what the box top looks like. Because they burnt that. They burnt the instructions.
Next year they taught this stuff in school.
You didn't see what the puzzle was. No, they
Yeah,
don't
they
do
won't,
it for
because
a
then they can't
reason.
control us.
That's why the United States of America doesn't have a law book. They have the United States Code, the UCC Code, the IRS Code. Okay. They have constitutions, they have treaties, they have every state statute. Why are they all separated? Here, there, and everywhere. So that they can hide everything. If they put it in multiple volumes, they hide it all from us. So
It's great on one hand because they have to publish it, but instead of them publishing it the way that it should be published, they scatter it here, there, and then they say,
that's right. Now it's up to you. See, and if you are busy working for a living or raising your family and doing it, and why would you even think to have to? See, there's a problem there.
we don't know.
No, that's right. So,
Ignorance.
I would have thought that they would have known on it, if they were working. That's what I would have thought, if I was working that day with teachers.
I don't know if you can see that word. But that one word is the reason why we didn't know who to believe. We didn't know who to believe. We had to find out who this was. As soon as we found out who that was, we knew he was the real person.
burrito, how do you pronounce that?
All right. All of what you did helped my brain a little bit. I got a huge hard drive and very little RAM. There's 3 types of law: superior law, supreme law, and everything else. This is really corporate bylaws. Rules, codes, statutes, and ordinances are not law. There's half a dozen Supreme Court cases that tell you that. Rules, codes, statutes, and ordinances are not law. They're corporate bylaws. Who does corporate bylaws apply to? We're going to skip the federal and just say employees of corporations. That's the corporate bylaws. McDonald's writes their corporate bylaws. They put in an employee manual, they hand it to an employee, and he's got to follow those bylaws or he loses his job, gets fired, or gets reprimanded in some way. This is their reprimand. What does did I spell that right?
Misdemeanor, that's good enough.
Doesn't matter, you'll know what it is. Misdemeanor. What does misdemeanor mean?
It's a sample again.
What is
You're not
demeanor?
bad.
That is that miss. You got a bad attitude.
Does that quite mean you're in dishonor, not quite?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You committed dishonor.
Dishonor, okay.
A misdemeanor because your demeanor was off. That's what misdemeanor was. Okay. Felony. What's felony mean?
Even more badder than misdemeanor.
It is even more battered. I love that term. That's a technical term there. Fell. What happens when you fall? When you fall,
On a knee,
yeah, basically, you're on your knees, right? You fall. A felony.
you like your lawyer to do?
What's that?
I said, what do you like your lawyer to do? All on a knee?
Yeah, it's more serious, is really what it means. More serious. You fell. Anyone who has fallen on their knees before the king. Felony. Brought before the king, you're knocked onto your knees. Boy, you better kiss his boots, right? So anyway, superior law is God's laws. They're natural. Nature's laws. Mother Earth's. Supreme laws are constitutions and treaties. Constitutions and treaties. What does cons mean? Con.
Anti.
Yeah.
So would charters fall under that too?
Charters. Corporate charters. A constitution is a compact, which is a corporate charter. Our constitutions and our treaties. People seem to think that we have rights because some charter says we do. And it's written down somewhere in some treaty. No, their rights are enumerated in these documents. It came from God and nature, natural rights. Constitution is a con. That means that which is legal is an abomination to God. It's against God's laws. This is lawful. And this is legal. What is
So
legal?
is Supreme, isn't it?
What is legal is unlawful.
The Constitution is, the statutes fall under the Constitution, don't they? The trickle down?
No. Statutes, if they don't agree with the Constitution, they're null and void. However, they are a corporate bylaw.
Right, of the isn't it the Constitution for rules for the corporation?
Constitution's up here. Distinct line right there. This is lawful. This is God's laws are unalienable rights, and unalienable is really unalienable. Unalienable. They can't place a lien on our rights. They can't control them. We the people, everybody should buy the book Law of Nations. Law of Nations by Vattel.
Vattel, B Vattel?
Vattel. Law of Nations has been around. It is our oldest international law book
Wow.
that exists, next to the Magna Carta. Okay? The Law of Nations is how nations are set up, how they're founded. And in the Law of Nations, you'll find that nations are what? A society of people. The people lay down the law. So these are we the people's law. We the people negotiate treaties. We the people write a corporate charter. Tell the government, this is your restrictions. This is how you shall operate. That's your corporate charter. If I go start ABC Corporation and I have to go file with the state, I have to tell them what kind of business I have, what my corporate charter is. If I go against the corporate charter, what happens? The state can pull my business license if I do anything against my corporate charter. Does our government do things against their corporate charter?
Yes.
Why are we pulling their business license?
So they really go higher.
No, they don't.
I know they don't.
Is it because people are too chicken to hold there?
Nope, it isn't even because they're chicken. I don't believe people are chicken. They're not knowledgeable. They remove the knowledge and you feel like you're inadequate. You don't have the qualifications to do that. You're inadequate. Okay? Right. So my job is to piss you off enough, you'll get off your butt and go do something. And the other thing is to give you confidence, so you'll go do it. And once you understand these things, how governments are set up, how they've taken advantage of us, you'll stand up, you'll get off your butt, and you'll go do something. But most people won't do anything about it until something bad happens to their life. And then, of course, it's much harder. It would have been easier had they did it from the get-go. But they weren't taught it. How many law classes did you have kindergarten through 12th grade?
Well, we do in high school, yes, like
Civics?
No, government, the fake government,
Civics
Fake
classes is the real
Constitution.
civics, it's not teaching you anything.
all that
shim stuff.
Right. It all changed in 1951.
They didn't ever tell you about science or anything.
1951, the whole entire school system changed. So I guess it's time for that story. What I'm doing is trying to be repeatable. You guys learn the story, you go tell somebody else the
It's
story.
great, yeah.
Okay? So I'm going to skip to 1951, then we'll go back a ways. But if you could close your eyes and picture the greatest school teacher in your mind that could ever exist, it was a lady named Jane Spalding. Sweet little old lady, very intelligent, well-spoken, very knowledgeable on math and science and English, just the perfect school teacher. And the United States government picked her out of a whole bunch of school teachers and paraded her around all 50 states under the auspice of selling estates on standardized education. So a student in California could get up and move in the middle of the school year to New York and they'd fit right in. And also on the auspice of government funding. The government, the big guys, would step in and help fund the schools. Before that, the states were funding all the schools themselves. Okay. So, on April 11th, 1951, the last state signed off, and Jane Spalding became the head of the Department of Education as she was selling the states on for 2 years. Then she would be the head of it. If all the states signed off on it, we had to have all of them. And if all the states signed off on it, she would be the head of the Department of Education. And 49 days later, they fired Jane Spalding after selling all the states on her being the head of the Department of Education. And they put Nelson Aldrich Rockefeller as the head of the Department of Education. A grandson of one of our most prominent banking families. And during his acceptance speech, they asked Nelson, "How much money did you make last year, Nelson?" And he said, $140 million. That's a lot of money in 1951, right? Or 1950. And how much did you pay in taxes last year, Nelson? And he reaches into his pocket and he grabs an Indian head penny and he flips it into the crowd and he says, "Not 1 red cent." Kind of a racist comment. He'd be hammered for that today.
It's another one I never realized, yeah.
Yeah,
There's a couple
and that
of
became a
them.
famous term, "not 1 red cent."
Oh, I just heard it.
Then they asked him, if you made $140 million last year, why would you take a job that pays $35,000? Doesn't make sense. And he says, because I consider this the greatest position in all of government. And the hands went up and the flashbulbs went off and everybody raised their hands. Why do you consider this a more important position than the President and the Vice President of the United States? And Nelson looks at him and says, you give me 1 decade, just 1 generation, and I'll change the minds and therefore the direction of the world. That makes me the most powerful man on earth.
Big ones that also said,
8 years later, every single textbook in schools changed. And not only did they change, every damn thing in them was a lie. History books, Honest Abe, the greatest president ever lived, never told a lie. 420 years ago, little kids get up on stage in every school in America and do the play of Abe wearing the beard and the top hat, right?
well, even Paul Revere was a lie. So, he's real good for it.
I'm just telling you, everything in there is a provable lie. If you want to learn real history, there's one way to do it. If I wanted to learn about Abe Lincoln, I would go to the National Archives and I would look up the letters and journals of people who lived in 1840 and 1850 right here in Illinois. Because I did that. And I learned who Abe Lincoln really was. He was a follower of Karl Marx. He became, governor of Illinois. He passed lots of communistic laws that still affect Illinois today. He set up the office of the Attorney General of the state of Illinois to protect and uphold the interests of the Crown. And he was the first Bar Association president. He failed running for president 5 times before he finally won. What was the difference between his first, second, third, fourth, and fifth and his 6th attempt? The big bankers of Boston, New York, Chicago, Philadelphia got behind him and put put $7 million into his campaign. The other guy had $5,000. 5,000 was a lot back in the day when the average man made $20. 5,000 was a lot of money in a campaign. Lincoln had $7 million. His information was on the sides of every train. Every crate of guns made by Winchester had vote for Abe. I mean, they plastered his name everywhere. They made him a household name, and the people voted him in. And then what happened? On his first day in office, he couldn't legally take office because he was a bar member. So they'll tell you that the original 13th Amendment to the Constitution was never ratified. But it's been proven that the state of Virginia ratified it. And the documents that were in 7 museums, every one of those museums burnt down on the same day. But it was in more than 7 places. But they tried to destroy the record. It was called the Atonement Title of Nobility Act, saying that somebody who held a title of nobility, which all British Accreditation Registry officers did, that he couldn't be president. So what did he do? He bankrupted the United States of America and its trading companies, the Virginia and the West Indies Trading Company, and he bankrupted them. And he reincorporated them as a Palmer Corporation. He did that in the executive orders. I'll tell you, in 30 days, he signed 100 executive orders. And they were numbered 1 through 100. No president prior to Abe Lincoln had never signed an executive order. Do you know why? Because they weren't an executive of a corporation.
But the act of 1871 did that, right?
No. That was the second
Oh, the second one?
bankruptcy after the Civil War, the Reconstruction Acts, second time. Okay. So in these first 100 executive orders, he did quite a damage to the country. Pissed a lot of people off, including a patriot named Booth. Okay. The problem is they didn't shoot him soon. But in these executive orders, he put the Grand Army of the Republic in charge of the United States government and made himself Commander-in-Chief of the United States Army. That's why all presidents since have been sworn in as Commander-in-Chief and the President. Okay. Executive Order number 100 was the Labor Code. It put the country under martial rule, and it's never been rescinded. That's why we have all these trading with the enemy acts, and emergency acts, and the Patriot Act, and I mean on and on and on. All.
Biggest thing I saw was in the military, and he retired, but would he still be working for the president, like they did Palmer? Like,
No one in the military ever works for the president.
they don't?
He has to change hats. He's the Commander-in-Chief when he's doing it.
My dad always says he works for the president, not.
Trump,
Yeah.
when Trump did the executive order returning the United States back to the Republic, did that have something to do with this martial code, this labor martial rule?
Is it what?
The martial rule with the labor code, did it have something to do with that? Flipping that?
No.
No, did you say labor?
I haven't
or
read
labor?
that, I've read it somewhere, but it's not on the tip of my tongue exactly what it did. Was that it, that was in 2017?
Yeah.
Was that?
Yeah, I'll talk.
Did you say labor or labor?
It's called the Lever.
The labor?
Yes.
L-I-B-O-R?
Senator Lever.
Okay.
He had Senator Lever, right? See, Lincoln didn't want to do any of this in his own name.
Okay.
So, Senator Morrill wrote the Morrill Act. The Morrill Act is what caused the Civil War. Most people don't know that.
No, I
People think it was all about slavery. Lincoln in his own letter said, I never would have freed the slaves had it been up to me. He owned slaves.
But he made his law like,
Well, he started the process. The later he made his own slaves. He didn't do it himself. Senator Morrill created an unfair tax act. It taxed the farmers of the South up to 60% taxes on their goods, up to sliding scale. In the North, the manufacturers of the North, which were all the arms manufacturers, the train manufacturers, all that, and the bakers of the North, the South didn't have much for manufacturing or much for baking. The North had all that. They only taxed them up to 6%. 6 versus 60. See, they thought farm goods, the earth produces them, not the farmers. It's not the farmers anyway, it's God's. We're going to just take 60% of what it is.
Moral, also lawyers.
But he was a barman.
All
We have a lot of lawyer presidents prior to Lincoln. But Lincoln was the first bar association member.
so just to clarify, attorney is from the bar, but lawyer is not, how does that work?
Now today they're all
They're all bar, okay. So back then, what made the difference other than swearing your?
where they went to school.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of them went to Oxford, and that's where it originally started.
So is that really feeding off the
But
common law?
it's spread quickly. It started right here in Illinois. American Bar Association is founded right here in Illinois. Okay. So these first 100 executive orders really screwed us up as a nation. They started the process. Senator Morrill, Unfair Tax Act, caused 11 delegates from 7 southern states to walk out of Congress. They just got up and walked out. And that left Congress sin die. It means it died that day. It ended that day. There was no quorum to operate from that point forward. And when I talked to President Trump, I got to spend 5 or 6 minutes, 7 maybe, I don't know. I wasn't watching my watch. Yes. When he was walking towards me, I had to think of something to say that was going to make a difference. And I tried really hard. I wasn't sure what to say. I wasn't there to meet Trump. It wasn't the purpose. It just happened. I was there to meet Melania. I've been on Melania's task force for over a year. But he came by, gave me a hat. I'll bring the hat tomorrow or the next day. I got it here with me. Anyway, what I came up with was this. I said, President Trump, our 2018 census said we have 327.2 million people in the United States as of 2018. I says, our corporate charter, our constitution, says we're supposed to have 1 representative in Congress for every 30,000 people. Divide 327.2 million people by 30,000, you come up with 10,907. And I did that in my head, by the way. 10,907 congressmen. We have 435 of them. I said Congress operates off of a book called the Mason's Manual. Mason's Manual for Meetings. It says if there's not a quorum, then nothing, they cannot do anything. They can't pass anything. They can't do anything except call the next meeting. That's all. They're supposed to adjourn and go home. They don't have a quorum. 435 is not 2/3 of 10,907. So Congress has not had a quorum since 1861, I don't So nothing Congress has done or passed since 1861 has any cause and effect. It's all null and void. Because 1861, the land of Lincoln.
So is that a way to get rid of those 100 executive orders?
What's that?
So can we get rid of the first 100 executive orders?
No, because Congress had nothing to do with that. But nothing Congress has done means anything since then. And he said, I know that. And then he made me cry. He looked me right in the eye and he said, that's why I passed an executive order restoring the United States of America, and now it's up to you. I just went into tears. I mean, it literally made me cry. There I am crying right in the Rose Garden in front of Melania.
Your mascara was gonna run in front of her.
Yeah, I would have been worried if you sure would have. Because that hit me so hard at that moment, you know, that it's up to us. See, the de jure government has always existed. Right here, and right there, and right there. And every side, every one of us, we have a de jure government of we the people. 44 out of 45 presidents have stood up on stage or in front of cameras and said the people are sovereign, including President Trump. So next time that cop says that sounds like a bunch of sovereign citizens, bullshit. I don't care if it's a cop, a judge, or anybody. To say to me 44 out of 45 of our presidents were wrong. See, but you can't be sovereign and be a citizen at the same time. There's a pretty lady I know. Hi, sweetheart.
I've been 10 miles from here. I'm trying to get here for 4 hours.
I don't know where Judge Randy is. She was here yesterday. Yeah, her and I went to Navy Pier and all over downtown. We started at 5 a.m. yesterday morning. Heading for downtown.
I just had a miracle. The 2 people who were just brought me here talking about
So anyway, the de jure government was within sight, we the people. The de facto is everything else. The biggest thing I try and get through everybody's head so they understand this, because I'll tell you, I've told people this over and over and over again, and then a year later they call me up and go, I remember what you said. You were telling us this. And it took a year to sink in. De facto is without fact. Without fact. Defective, that's not a good term.
That's good.
They're defective, all right, but they're without fact. Rules, codes, statutes, and ordinances are not law. They're corporate bylaws. They're for employees of the corporation to follow. So how can they take you into court and hold you accountable for breaking a statute? Well, they can. Because you screwed up. You made a mistake of somewhere checking a box and you're a U.S. citizen automatically.
Now, like, on the campus, what do you shut down on? Like, if they have one of those, like, little sensors.
You don't even have to fill out a census.
And
They will bring government agents to your house. You don't have to do it.
yeah, you don't have to do that. But in Title 8, Section 1101 is your definitions of status. And there's a whole bunch of statuses. And everybody just assumes they are a U.S. citizen because that's what we're led to believe through our propaganda, and through our schools, from
The title.
Title 8, Section 1101. That's definitions of statuses in the United States Code. If you don't learn any other law book, learn the United States Code. because it was put there for one reason only, for we the people to hold government accountable.
So the USC.
The
What's
US,
the difference between UCC? Is that just for international?
UCC is international,
Okay.
international commerce.
But the USC mirrors it in a lot of ways, right? And every state has their own USC code.
We'll talk more later. So, the United States Code is put there for us to use against them, to hold our government accountable, but also to teach us and to give us choices. Why would the government write a law like Title 18, Section 242? Tell we the people that these agents are depriving us of our rights under the color of law. No, because the government didn't write the United States Code, we the people did. See, that goes back to law of nations. When nations are set up, a society is formed, we the people lay down the law. We the people lay down the law. We do it. And if they step outside of their scope of authority, we're supposed to hold them accountable. And they step outside their scope of authority all the time, and we go home.
So how do we do that though? Do we file a complaint?
That stays in there. You don't file a complaint.
Okay. I'm just like,
I know you are. United States Code. Stop it with the United States Code.
what process do you say? How do we discuss?
I'll process later. This is a beginner class, right? We the people. This word is different from this word. This is lawful, that's legal.
So that's like.
What is legal is not lawful. What is legal is an abomination to God. Big difference. See, they want to claim we're a person, a citizen, or a resident. In fact, they have to get our agreement of these three things before they can have, I'll misuse the word jurisdiction.
Why would it be residents? Are resident of the US?
What does the word resident mean in the law?
Wouldn't it be like residents living there?
Resident means someone there temporarily to do business. Automatically putting you in commerce. That's what resident means. Someone there temporarily to do business. Citizen, city means municipal. Zen means someone in charge, a leader of society.
Like, the married couple.
Someone
husband.
who's a leader is interested in doing the work of society. So what does that mean? Interested in doing the work of society, a municipal, makes you an employee. This word means employee. Person is an entity or vessel. Resident is to do business. When they get your tacit agreement of those three things, they got you. What is tacit agreement? I call it tacking. Because they tack it right to your butt. They do, if you agree.
Do you agree?
How did they get your agreement? Cop walks up the window and says, "Can I have your driver's license, proof of insurance, and registration, please?" And you gather them all up and you hand it to them. An employee does what the boss tells him to do when the boss tells him to do it. He's got tacit agreement of you being a citizen. Your driver's license has your persona on it, and it has your address with your zip code. The United States was divided into 10 districts, U.S. postal districts. When I write 97702 on my envelope that I mail to Grandma, I'm confirming to them that I'm in the 9th district of the District of Columbia. I live in Washington, D.C. You say 327 million people in this country live in Washington, D.C. because they live in a district of the District of Columbia. If you don't believe me, go get indicted in Oregon. And all your federal paperwork's going to say the 9th district. It doesn't say Oregon on there. The 9th district. It's the 9th district of the District of Columbia. And you reside in Illinois temporarily to do business.
So you're not actually a citizen, you're temporarily doing business.
You're a citizen temporarily doing business. You're an employee doing business for the district. You're on personal assignment. Yeah. Through the Department of Human Resources. When you get hired by a company to go to work, who do you go see first after your interview? You might see the boss at your interview, but who does he send you to? He sends you to the HR department, the Department of Human Resources, to fill out all your paperwork. That's called a birth certificate. It's filed with the Department of Human Resources in that state. You just filled out your employee form, or your mother did. See, one of the greatest travesties in the world that will expose this entire con job, this Ponzi scheme that we're all under, is to tell the story of a mother. When I told the story of a mother, a guy named William Moffat heard it, and William bugged me for months to be an ambassador for Voice of Youth and speak for the children in government, to governments. William traveled to every government in the world and spoke with all the world leaders. He spoke at The Hague, spoke to Antonio Guterres, who called me when I accepted the ambassadorship from William. William put out a blast fax to all these world leaders, and one day, when I was sitting in a hotel room in Crookston, Minnesota, for Tim Holmstead, that night I got 45 phone calls from world leaders. I was up all night, never got to lay down and go to sleep. I was pacing the floor in my boots, talking to world leaders all night long because they were congratulating me on accepting that ambassadorship for the Voice of Youth. I didn't even think it was that big a deal.
Oh, obviously they do.
Okay, but they did. So the story of a mother. See, one of the first acts in 1908 that set up this system of fraud, this Ponzi scheme.
Social Security.
No, way
Birth
before that.
certificate.
Way before that, it was called the Birth Act, which is better known as the Foundling Act. A mother, 9 months pregnant, walks into a foundling hospital. All hospitals in the United States were designated as foundling hospitals in 1908. The word foundling means a safe place to abandon a child. Anyone can take a child into a hospital or to a church because of that act and abandon that child without consequence. She won't be arrested for it. It's a safe place to abandon a child. So she walks into the foundling hospital, 9 months pregnant, about ready to give birth. And she goes through a major medical procedure called childbirth, where she's under duress, under the influence of painkillers, and she's handed a stack of papers to sign, and merely told, this is just to register your baby and give it a name.
Yeah, you can't.
That's right, and that's the words the nurses are taught to use. Just to register your baby and give it a name. It's in every nurse's handbook. I've told this in groups of nurses. I had a bunch of nurses in my class, and they all said, "Oh my gosh, you're right. That's what we're taught to say."
Can you sign a PC?
The mother fills out that paperwork and signs as an informant. The legal definition of the word informant is someone who gives someone else up to another. Think about all the cop shows you watch when they're trying to arrest a drug dealer. They go to their informant. What's the informant do? He gives up the drug dealer to the cop. Someone who gives up someone else to another. Okay? So she signs it as an informant. The birth certificate through the Department of Human Resources is a bond. It's bonded. It's got a bank name on it. It's got a CUSA number. A CUSA number is an investment control number regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Okay, it's on the birth certificate. I know a lot of them, not all of them,
I know, what is it?
but it's on there.
I know he signed for our daughter. I didn't sign for
Firstborn and we sign.
And that is very rare, because typically when the man signs, then it becomes a bastard child.
Oh, so
Yeah. So they like the mother to sign.
I know they did for him, but that's something I
He's a
signed.
bastard. What legally, what does that mean for the child? It takes away their inheritance rights?
It goes quarterback,
Go back.
heirship,
Right.
hierarchy. You don't want bastard children. So the oldest son inherits the father's estate. If he signs off on it, giving the child up to another, he's created a bastard child. It's not his anymore. See, when the mother signs off, giving the child up to another, it's not hers anymore either. What it does is it creates the false doctrine of parens patriae. Right there. And that's a false doctrine. That means the state is the parent. You gave up the child to the state. The state is the parent. The child is a vessel. Came out of the water, traveled through the canal, was docked at the dock by the doctor, which is a dock tender. Ask a doctor, does a physician deliver a child? And if they know what I'm talking about, then I'm going to tell you no. No physician delivers a child. A doctor delivers a child. That's where the term doctor came from.
What about the OB/GYN? No, the different doctor in OB/GYN.
Yeah, that's a nurse,
Oh,
essentially. They may or may not have a doctor degree. A lot of OB/GYNs have master's degrees but no doctor degrees. So, but if they do have a doctor, then they're better qualified OB/GYN. But anyway, parents patriae. Another one is logo parentis. What does that mean? What does logo mean? That's right, crazy parenting. It's another false doctrine the state uses. Crazy parenting. See, this is why, if they all of a sudden decide that they don't like what you're doing with your kid or how you're raising them or how you're taking care of them, they can step in without any due process of law. And under these two false doctrines, they can remove your child from your home.
I did that with us with my parents. My parents had
They, s- they steal and kidnap your children because they're operating under these two doctrines. What codified those doctrines? God, I can't right. Title IV. And ASPA. Title IV and ASPA codify those doctrines. In both of those, through the intent of Congress, it says it cannot take a child from a parent without the parent's consent. But they try and get the parents' consent. How do they get the parents' consent?
By signs, right?
By being a person, a citizen, or resident, and getting you to contract for services. They've got it. They've got all the authority they need to steal your child out of your house in the middle of the night, if need be, or from your school, because you have claimed to be a person, a citizen, a resident, giving them tacit agreement. Through these two false doctrines, they can do it, because you already gave them up at birth. Now you're just arguing about it, all right? Because you didn't know what you did. Pretty damn sick system, really. It's a pretty sick system. What's that?
I think it's very fair.
No, it's not fair at all. But
I notice that like preying on people that are less fortunate, they're more poor than other people.
That's not necessarily
how
true.
with ours.
however, if you do have a whole lot of money, they're also bar members. See? Those guardian ad litems are bar members and stuff, and they know that if they take a kid from somebody with a lot of money, that they can hire the best of the best of the best attorneys. And the best of the best attorneys are going to know about this. And they're going to say, you can't do that. So they operate on your lack of knowledge. Does God say in the Bible, for their lack of knowledge, my people shall be destroyed? I wonder why this happens to you. It's SMU. That's why it happens. Very, very important to understand the story of a mother and how she signs off on this.
That's where you home and do your research, and then maybe you'll get a better understanding.
So here's what happens on the birth certificates. Okay. Underneath the umbrella of the public charitable trust, the public charitable trust was set up where we are the co-trustees, the co-beneficiaries, and the only signatory officer of the trust. We, the people, are set up under the public charitable trust that way. But they come in, and through the birth certificate, they create a whole bunch, every single one of us, 327 million of us in the United States, and billions more across the world. They create little cystic QV trusts. It's supposed to be a Q. Not sure it is. Cystic QV trusts. They just followed England's 1666 rule. The other companies adopted in 1707. All the commonwealths in England adopted in 1707. And we adopted it in 1935. That's when it went into effect. We adopted it earlier. That's when it went into effect. And the Cesta QB Trust is a trust set up in our persona, its name, with a custom number, bonded and insured. So what does it do? What does a trust do? It creates a balance sheet with debits and credits. Balance sheet. This is an accountant. Okay. Balance sheet's balance, right? So what happens if you were born between 1933 and 1975? You were bonded for $630,000. And you were insured for $1 million. When you open a bank account, the FDIC insure it to $250,000. When they bonded us for 630, they were required to insure those funds for $1 million. So they took out life insurance policies. Why? Because who did they get the bonds from? The International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the United Nations, the Federal Reserve, which is all part of the same corporation. The IMF lent the Public Charitable Trust $630,000 of various denominations, 1s, 5s, 10s, 20s, 50s, and 100s, and they threw them out there into the public. They distributed them to the banks. They lent $630,000 on the debit side. If you were born after 1975, that went to $1 million and that went to $2 million. Okay, so that went to $1 million, that went to $2 million. So, I'm old. $630,000 went on the debit side. Now our job, when we reach 18, is to go out into the public charitable trust, into the public, and earn as much money as we can, gather it up, and then go spend it. That's what's called legal tender. It doesn't discharge any debt. It tenders it to a later date. So we spend $200,000 on a home, $50,000 on cars, over our lifetime, $30,000 on utilities, whatever it is we want, it doesn't matter. They keep track of it through our bank statements and our tax returns. They keep track of our debts. And our debts column just goes up. On this side, on the credit side, they issued $630,000 worth of United States Treasury bonds into an investment account under our CUSIP number. Regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission, they created an investment that people could invest in, companies could invest in.
Like stocks and bonds.
That you, the company, that they could buy and invest in. They sold $630,000 worth. That's your balance sheet. It balanced. Then you went out, turned 18, started earning money, spending money, and kept adding up. This kept growing too. These investments grow. They earn interest, they grow, they buy and sell and trade, they grow. And at some point in time, something happens. You die. It's like death.
Yeah.
Anyway, you die, it goes through probate. They take money out of here, they pay the IMF back their loan. This zeroes out. Whatever's left in here lives on in perpetuity forever. My dad that died in 1989, I can pull up his social security number, his birth certificate number, and I can show you the companies that are buying and selling and trading him today. He's been dead for years. It lives on in perpetuity forever. So what happens? They reinvest whatever the balance is, it might be $100 million. They reinvest it, and they keep making money. That money, interest earned, trades earned, they put into a sweep account. If you go into your bank and you open a checking account and a savings account, and you tell the banker, I want to designate my savings account as a sweep account, let's just say you have a utility bill for $90 or $92.50. They round up to the nearest 100. They pull 100 out of your checking account. They pay your utility bill of $92.50, and they put $7.50 in your savings account. People use that as a forced savings plan because out of sight, out of mind. They don't see it in their checkbook register. It's already gone, but it's still there in case they need it. So banks sell it as a forced savings account. That's what our federal government does. with the Cesta QB Trust. Any interest earned, the balance stays the same, it lives on in perpetuity forever. Any interest earned funds government. It funds government to this day. My dad that died in 1989 is funding government to this day. And everybody that died in World War II, and Korea, and Vietnam, and Panama. Huh?
Stop them from like your dad or like my grandma.
That's another class.
Oh.
If this is the government budget, the money they take in, how much of this is taxes? Just a little piece. In fact, they use income taxes to pay the interest on the money that was borrowed from the Federal Reserve due to the bankruptcy of the United States. They're paying off their bankruptcies. All bankruptcies of the governments are not Chapter 7s. They're Chapter 11s. That's why the company's allowed to live on, because they're under reorganization. That's why they call them the Reconstruction Acts in 1871, when you brought that up earlier. Okay. Tariffs. Tariffs and taxes. Even all the tariffs we take in doesn't fund government. What funds this section of the pie? The Cesta QE Trust funded. It's all off-book funds. It's that ledger the mafia keeps in the safe, doesn't tell the government about. You know, the state level, it's our GSAs. On the state level.
Same ones that, what was it you're talking about? About the judge, you know, a separate account. Okay.
Yeah, they bond. That's why court case numbers are CUSA numbers. If they want to collect ahead of time for your misdemeanors and your felonies, they can collect out of your Cesta QB Trust before probate because you owe a debt to society. And they create a CUSA number and they collect from it.
That'd be double dipping.
On the GSA level, it's the SF
Who's GSA stand for?
23, no, it's 24. SF 24 and SF 25A. That's your bid bond, performance bond, payment bond. The federal level buys all the state case numbers, all the state CUSAs get sold to the federal level. Go to any federal courthouse. You've got judges up here on different levels of the building. And then you got floors of court clerks. Lots and lots of court clerks on the federal level. Why do they need so many court clerks to manage those few cases that the federal takes in? No, because they bought all the state's cases and they process them. The court clerks of the federal courts are the only ones that have access to the treasury. So they buy it from the state, giving the state funds for your misdemeanors, felonies. And then they do all the accounting at the court clerk level, interacting with the Department of Fiscal Services.
Oh, yeah.
Department of Fiscal Services. I forgot, it's governmental state accounts. I didn't forget, it just took a second. My RAM's slow. Okay.
It's another treatment, another word slower.
Governmental state accounts. Under the Miller Act is the Government Bonding Act. I don't even care if you're a contractor and you're going to go build a government road. You're operating under the Miller Act. all government bonding goes through under the Miller Act. So these are bond forms. Upon indictment, the court fills out an SF-23, sends it up to the federal courthouse building, and the court clerk says, okay, you've indicted somebody, we're going to put in a bid bond. Upon trial, they fill out a performance bond, telling the federal court to tell the Treasury that they're going to have to perform. Upon sentencing, they fill out a payment bond, which is a wire transfer form. And on the federal level, if they do the case early in the day, they'll be paid by 5. If they do it late in the day, they'll be paid the next day on their wire transfer from the Department of Fiscal Services. The Department of Fiscal Services website is tremendous. At the same time, it's frustrating until you know what this stuff is. But once you know what this stuff is, and I learned this over a long period of time, and then when I finally went to the Department of Fiscal Services, the pieces of the puzzle started to come together. And I could see the picture of what they were doing. And I studied their sample forms, and I studied this. One of the first things I did was, why does the Department of Fiscal Services have a website? What does a bunch of accountants sitting in a building need with a website? The general public would never think to go to the Department of Fiscal Services website to look up anything. Now, the Treasury, they might want to go look something up. But why would they go to the Department of Fiscal Services website? They wouldn't. The general public could care less. We don't even want to know what those bean counters are doing, right? They don't. The court clerks go to the website to ask questions of the Department of Fiscal Services. How do we do this? How do we do that? What sample forms do we need? What forms do we need for this? What forms do we need for that? You can learn a ton off their website by looking at the questions that court clerks ask the Department of Fiscal Services on their website. And they post them, the questions. And if you click on the questions, it opens a window. And it gives you the Department of Fiscal Services answer to the court clerks. And if you study and you learn and you already know the basics, because I stood up here and taught you, then you'll start to put the pieces of the puzzle together yourselves, and you'll find out how this system all works and how they get paid. About 5 years ago, I proved this in federal court in the 9th District. In front of Judge Mosley. I proved how this all works and how they get paid. And I said, and Judge, by the way, what does the term net retention mean? Net retention? What does the term net retention mean? Because, see, I have a degree in business with a major in economics. And net retention is what you retain as your commission, isn't it, Judge?
Yeah.
So when you look at the sample forms, you're going to see on a felony count of fraud that the penal sum is $2 million. So when they indict somebody on a felony count of fraud, they're going to ask for $2 million. Plus the judge's net retention, $95,000. And the prosecutor's net retention, $50,000. And then I found out something even more important than that. that if you were charged with felony count of fraud, like the lady of this case I'm talking about, and you had paid your defense attorney $27,000 to represent you, that all he does is walk in the back room and says, "Judge, she could only pay me $27,000. You get 95. He gets 50. I want my share." So the judge kicks in 20, and the prosecutor kicks in 20, and he makes 40 on the back end. And that way, he can be an actor to a turn. The word attorney means an actor to a turn. An actor is a person who gets up on stage and lies convincingly enough to make you believe in the character and the plot. And to a turn means to steal from one and turn over to another. So he sits on his butt and he says, "Don't talk. I'll handle it later. Don't talk." And he sits there and he doesn't rebut anything. He doesn't object. He doesn't do anything to help you while you're railroaded through the system so they can collect on their penal sum and their net retentions.
Is that over both paid attorneys and public defenders?
Yes. They don't do anything for free. A public pretender, I like that word, gets paid by who? The court.
Taxes.
The court. Where does the court get their money?
From the people.
From the penal sum.
Oh,
From you. From your Sesta trust.
I know we told them that.
Do you get how bad this is?
That's,
You're back there with one of those looks on your face like, holy crap.
Okay, so question.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really bad. This is why Lady Justice is chained in the basement. There's no justice in the courts because greed is taking over. Because they learned where their paycheck came from.
Criminal law and criminal courts. What about in family courts?
It trickles downhill.
Judge is getting paid, but then you have the private attorney and the private attorney. So is the judge giving them the money to, that's what they're doing in the chambers? Because mine just turned
What is a
immediately to
bar
complete
association?
180 and became buddies with the
Hold on a
other
minute.
employees inside.
Right? What is a
She
bar
got bits.
association?
Yeah, that's,
Oh, he get, yeah.
The bar association is a labor union. It's like the electrical workers' labor union, where they all get together and go on strike if they don't get what they want. That includes the defense, the judge, and the prosecutor. They're a labor union. They all go to lunch together, they go golf together, they pat each other on the back, they talk to each other in the men's room. I won a case one time because I had to go to the bathroom. And I was in a stall, going to the bathroom, and I overheard them talking. And I walked out and I said, "Hey, I want you to dismiss the case right now because you guys just had an ex parte hearing." That means they talked about what was going to happen in the case
in the wash.
in the bathroom.
What about when they go back in the judge's chambers? How
Same
legal is
thing.
that?
Yeah.
If they do that, that's not legal. That's
No.
not on the, that's not.
Nothing to
yes,
do is
nothing.
lawful.
Well, obviously, it's
Nothing.
not lawful. Okay, so how does the judge make money in these family cases, keeping them going, allowing them to keep going? Are they getting paid 95 grand
Your
a
state
case or
courts,
a year per case? Because it's like for a 16-year case. How
your
much?
state courts got too busy.
Okay.
And so they created the family court to take some of the load off. They're just employees of the state court. They all get paid through the TSA, out of the Sesta QB, from a custom number, from your Sesta QB
But
charge.
are they getting paid for keeping our cases going as well? The family court cases going as well?
Absolutely.
Because obviously we're not getting felons, we're not getting misdemeanors, but
When
they're
they come-
encouraging just us to come back, so I'm curious how much they get every time we go back.
Well, I did some research a few years back, and when they take a child from a husband and wife, they take $1.5 million out of the Social Security trust of the wife, $1.5 million out of the Social Security trust of the husband. Then they get Title IV funds, which are our Social Security funds, from the husband and wife's Social Security account. And then they get ASFA funds, which are from the taxpayers. They get paid in 3 ways. This is why I tell people over and over and over again, there is no government. I told President Trump that. No quorum to even exist. We have no government. He said, that's why I restored the United States of America. The hat he gave me says, the United States of America. Those same hats during Obama's term in the gift shop said United States.
Why does it say America then Obama said the difference?
Because Obama wanted one world government under the United States Corporation. Did we win? Go ask these older guys in here, ask them if we won World War II. They'll tell you yes. We dropped a bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and we won World War II. But when you study history, you study what really happened. It wasn't from a bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's not what ended the war. All of our enemies and all of our allies during World War II were United Nations countries except us. The only way we were going to be allowed to win the war was on December 9th, 1945, we signed the United Nations Treaty. And the war ended. In the treaty, we gave Manhattan Island in New York.
That's why they do that now in London and that.
That's right, it's its own city, nation, state. Giuliani got up on television
United Nations.
and said, I don't have control over Manhattan Island. When the reporters were questioning him about all the tickets all these UN guys always get in their cars and never ever pay. They never pay the state of New York or New York City because they don't have to. And Rudy says, well, why? Or somebody asked Rudy, why do we pay our police force, New York City police force, to police Manhattan Island? And he says, because it's not New York City's police force. 1961, look up State House Publication 6227. If you really want to get pissed off, go read that.
State House,
Because it'll tell
what is it? State House.
State House Publication 6227. So United States State Department releasing a memo to all the police forces in the nation under the United Nations control, like the city of Chicago's police force, the city of Bend, Oregon's police force, under the United Nations control, to begin to figure out ways to confiscate our firearms, our guns. And that happened in 1961. And they've been trying to figure out ways ever since.
Wow.
But because of our Second Amendment of the Constitution, we've held them at bay a little bit. But they're nipping away at it. They're chipping away at it. You know, all kinds of stuff. But they were instructing the police officers to begin to find ways to confiscate our firearms. Clear it back in 61. Every police force, and then when I learned this is one of the reasons I stopped being at the Shoes County Sheriff's Deputy, is because every police force has 2 locker rooms. And one of them nobody goes into. But in every locker room is lockers with the police officer's name on it. Just like in his own locker room, where his uniform is, that says City of Bend or Deschutes County on it. They have one that's a blue United Nations uniform with his name on it. And we proved that this in Houston, Texas, when the flood happened from a hurricane. Houston was flooded. Police officers from the city of Houston had to put on the blue United Nations uniforms. They could call them into account at any time. There was 50 miles along the southern border given to the United Nations during that treaty as well.
50 miles.
50 miles wide. Get this.
And
How
we
did the
still,
United
we don't have
States-
it, we still don't have it, it's still theirs.
Let me ask you a question. How did the United States give away 25 miles on our side and 25 miles of property on the Mexican side? No. All happened in the same treaty. Because Mexico was already a United Nations country. Mexico doesn't own Mexico. The United States doesn't own the United States. The United Nations owns the United States. That's why every war we fought since World War II has been a United Nations authorized conflict. Not one declared war from Congress since then. Not one.
Really?
They've all been United Nations authorized conflicts. Korea, Vietnam, Panama, Grenada, Iraq,
Israel.
on and on and on.
Can I ask you something off the cuff?
Sure,
Have you heard of the Dick Act of 1902?
of course I know the Duke Act.
I just read about it last night. I was like, whoa. So,
Pretty interesting. So what about it? What question do you want?
well, I just didn't know if it was real, true, not, like, and if so, then,
Of course it's true. It's an act of Congress.
well, because they were on there, there's all over the internet saying, oh, it's fake, and, it's not.
The only party that says
So
it's
why
fake
doesn't
are ignorant
everybody
people.
know about that? I mean, why is that like not public
Why didn't you know
knowledge?
about the Dictionary Act? Why didn't you know about the Birth Act? All those acts of Congress are out there. They're all published, but they're here,
So
there,
why
and
do
everywhere.
people stand on them?
That's
Because
right.
they don't know it.
Because you weren't taught by our governmental controlled propaganda system called the school. Why aren't they teaching those?
Because then they wouldn't be able to control us.
That's right.
We wouldn't be sheep, we'd be
We
warriors.
wouldn't be sheep. That's the answer. That's right. What do you think they put fluoride in the water? It wasn't to fix our teeth.
And we got a family friend that was, he's still.
Me and I talked about this today about fluoride.
I just had a conversation. I was at the grocery.
Once we learn what the courts are doing, once we learn fraud, once we learn the history of fraud, once we study and read what acts of Congress created the system of fraud, then we begin to wake up. If we don't know the history of how we got here, how we got to where we are today, we would never wake up. We'd be watching football instead of sitting here on a Friday night or something. We'd be doing whatever it is we would do. But once we start to wake up, it's hard to go back as sheep. We want to keep learning. We want to keep studying. The problem is, if you go back a few pages here to the first page, we've only got 1,270 days to wake up a nation. That's it. That's all we have. That's all we have left. See, that's why I believe Trump's going to win one more presidency.
Yeah, what is-
I think he would hate to do it, much less do it for free. Because he, as much as he's been beat, humiliated, and shot at, his life threatened, his wife's life threatened, he knows this. He knows we're in the Great Awakening that it talks about in the Bible. And he knows that event. And he knows what Revelations 12 says. And he knows we're only given 2,000 days. Now, if you guys could just go teach everybody these basics right here and piss everybody off that we're all slaves, that they're taking money out of us through our court system, and they're using it to fund government. The Department of Fiscal Services says the Department of Justice is the largest contributor to the federal budget by far. Our courts in the United States collect $1 trillion a day from you guys. Some of that's in fines, penalties, tickets, whatever. But the majority is out of the penal sums collected through the GSAs, through the federal court and the Department of Fiscal Services leading to the Treasury. And that's how they all get paid. And that's where all of this money comes from, the funds government. And what happens if they don't think there's enough money because they just keep getting bigger and more bloated, and bigger and more bloated, and they're hungrier and they're hungrier? Well, they either tell the police officers to get out there and enforce policy and start collecting some revenue through our courts, or they start a war, kill a few thousand off, or they put up some mandatory vaccinations, or they stop a few cures, or they create a system of healthcare fraud that kills people. Dr. Error kills 250,000 people a year in the United States. Who's Dr. Error? This guy's smarter than almost all of them. And that's what I'm trying to tell you. All they got to do is stop the cure, create a vaccine, release a little bit in some ticks on some island. You see what I mean? And that's all they got to do if they just need more money. See, this is a hungry hippo. And it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's perpetuated itself. It's either got to grow on its own, or we the people got to stand up and say, you're operating outside the scope of authority. We're going to shut you down. And that's where we have to hold up public servants accountable. And it takes people whose kids have been stolen and they're out protesting the hospitals and the different agencies, the CPS offices, the courts, the legislator. They're going to the legislator. They're going to our Congress. Well, let's use Arizona. Arizona 4 years ago was stealing 40,000 kids a year. I go down there, I teach the police department down there in Maricopa County, one of the largest police forces in the world, and I teach them how CPS is kidnapping children. And they told CPS, we're not going to back you guys up. So CPS goes to the legislature and says, we want our own police force. And 300 parents showed up in yellow vests at the state legislature and said no. And so they didn't get their own police force. In the hospitals, we proved the fraud through Obamacare and how the medical coding system works and how that's open to agencies, and agencies lease office in the basement of the hospital. They got a CPS office in the basement of the hospital. They got a judge in the Superior Court of Arizona in the basement of the hospital. Mom is upstairs, 5th floor, with a child, and the exam's all done, and the child's running around, and the doctor makes a joke, as a compartmentalized legal idiot, he says something like, boy, sure got a lot of energy. And Mom goes, yeah, you ain't kidding, man. This kid wears me out. He must have ADHD or something like that. Or bipolar. And the doctor just writes that down in his notes. He walks over and he hands it to the coding expert in the office. And she looks at the notes and finds the codes and puts it in the computer. And certain codes pull up red flags down at the different agencies. Like if you mention you got a gun, it goes to the ATF.
Well, I put my son on soapbox without permission. They're supposed to talk to
It's not your son. You gave him away at birth. See?
Put him on the soapbox.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I had to go get back and retrieve him, but they put him on soapbox without permission.
They can do anything they want under those two false documents. Okay? So the issue is, it comes up on a computer screen as a red flag. All of a sudden, some agent that could have been hired yesterday, it's their first day on the job, now has all of your name, your address, your phone number, your child's name, where you work, their medical records, and has it all. Why does someone who might be first day on the job with an agency who was hired down at the employment office have access to all your personal records, medical history and records? That alone's scary. But now she just cuts and pastes. She takes the name of the parent, the address, phone number, everything, the child's name, puts it over on her document, which is an order, removal order, and she walks next door to the judge. She just leaves space next to her office from the Superior Court of Arizona and says, hey, sign this. We got a little problem upstairs. I gotta go handle it. And she gets on the elevator upstairs, 5 minutes, she's got her kid before you go off the hospital. For almost no reason whatsoever. No due process of law. Not committing a crime, being tried, found guilty by a jury, your peers, and sentenced. So for no reason at all, they snatch your kid from you and tell you you can't even come see it. Like you did Arlene Wills. No reason. They put her kid behind locked doors, and he's screaming for his mother, and you can hear him on video.
They're not coming down.
They're not coming. They're not doing anything, and it's on video. Exactly. This is our life. We the people's lives. They're screwing. And what are we going to do? It's up to you. Make that change. Once I give you that knowledge, it's up to you guys to change it. You don't have to be a citizen, a person, a resident. Yeah. You can be a people, a state national, and an inhabitant. All right. This leads me to the next stage.
Should we take a little break for? David, should we take a little break?
You want to take a break?
Yeah.
You need a break?
5-10 minute break.
Oh, you got beat? Just go outside, take those and you just drop on the ground.
Yeah.